that good with nuclear. You could have 1/20th what you have now and still do the damage that would be, that'd be so horrendous.
At 6:42 a.m., a ripple appeared on the still surface of the Caribbean Sea, and in that moment, something impossible happened. A steel giant, a U.S. Navy Virginia-class attack submarine, silently broke the water less than 2 nautical miles off Venezuelan patrol lines. The crew aboard the Venezuelan patrol ship Guapiro could hardly believe their eyes. Moments earlier, no warning blared, no sonar blipped, and yet, there it was, risen like a specter, cold and unannounced. This was not a mishap or a routine exercise. It was a deliberate act of presence, and its cost is staggering, roughly $3 billion in cutting-edge hardware and human expertise. With no missiles fired and no torpedoes launched, the United States sent a message without words. That moment of emergence shifted the rules beneath the waves and rewrote the geography of control on the surface. The U.S. military buildup across the southern Caribbean is real and sustained. Assets including guided missile destroyers, intelligence aircraft, and submarine deployments all converging in this tense arena. According to the Washington Post, the movement is part of a broader strategy to assert maritime dominance in a region where the boundaries between crime, politics, and power have begun to blur. But here's the question that changes everything. What if that single submarine, silent, unseen, and unstoppable, wasn't just gathering intelligence, but testing the line between deterrence and open conflict? If you want to know what happens next, how this single encounter could reshape the balance of power across the Caribbean, hit subscribe and stay with Military Power. The ocean is quiet, but the world beneath it is anything but. Imagine for a moment the steel hull of a vessel worth around $3 billion gliding silently beneath that Caribbean dawn. On the U.S. side, the stage is set by a submarine from the Virginia-class attack fleet. Its name unimportant here, its purpose unmistakable. This is a boat designed to dominate underwater domains, armed with heavyweight torpedoes such as the Mk-48A DCAP, and loaded with dozens of long-range cruise missiles like the BGM-109 Tomahawk. In fact, recent upgrades allow these submarines to carry up to 40 or more Tomahawks. Their sensors probe the ocean soundscape at depths beyond most adversaries' reach. Their propulsors hush vibrations and mask movement, and when they emerge, just when and where they choose, they carry the power to strike hundreds of miles inland, while remaining invisible until the moment of reveal. Now shift to the opposing side. For our scenario, we look at a vessel from the Venezuelan fleet. Let's call it the patrol ship of the Guapiro class. On the surface, it has respectable weaponry, an automatic 76mm gun, fire control radar, and crucially anti-ship missiles, such as the C-802A missile supplied by China. These missiles have a reported maximum range of around 120 kilometers. Yet beneath the surface lies the vulnerability. The sonar capability is designed for mid-depth waters and is not optimized to detect near-silent, deeply operating nuclei-powered submarines. In essence, this ship can defend what it sees, but it cannot detect what it cannot see. That contrast defines the imbalance of power. The U.S. submarine can attack first, strike at long range, and disappear before the target even knows what hit it. Meanwhile, the Venezuelan patrol vessel is limited to reacting. If its radar sees a missile flying in, if its crew manages to launch a countermeasure, if luck allows. The prior strike capability lies with the submarine. The patrol ship acts in a reactive mode. Now imagine the scenario escalating into actual conflict. At the press of a button inside that submerged U.S. war machine, a Tomahawk missile quietly departs and arcs toward a target deep within Venezuelan waters. The command center aboard the patrol ship has no time to prepare. Sensors flicker, alarms sound, and within seconds the command system is destroyed. Crisis triggered. On the other side, Venezuela fires a C-802A in response, but the missile faces an American submarine's advanced electronic warfare suite, such as the AN/SLQ-32, and countermeasures that reduce hit probability to perhaps 10 to 15%. The outcome? A missile strike that does not hit home, the patrol ship damaged or destroyed, and the submarine long gone. The Caribbean waters transform in an instant from patrol routes to danger zones. In short, this is not a classic naval battle of clashing ships and broadsides. It is a war of shadows and sensors, of systems that see before they are seen, and of vessels that strike without warning. If that first missile launches, what follows cannot be controlled. The silence of the deep becomes the loudest voice of power. Night had fallen over the southern Caribbean when the American submarine slipped into its pre-launch position. Deep beneath the waves, the hull of that nearly $3 billion monster moved quietly, its nuclear reactor humming in near silence, its exterior slick with an echoic coating. Above it, vessels of the Venezuelan fleet were cruising their usual patrol zones, unaware that something far more sinister had already entered their waters. The U.S. Navy boat, let's call it the Virginia-class attack sub, turned off all non-essential systems and entered what the crew calls the silent run phase. Every ventilation fan slowed, every pump minimized noise, and the sonar operators listened only to the faint hiss of the ocean's thermal layers. The water temperature gradients, the sea floor contours, the echoes from passing whales, all that became background noise to a crew that was hunting for one thing: reaction. Up on the surface, electronics aboard the Venezuelan patrol ship maintained normal patterns. Their sonar dome hummed, their radar spun, radar returns were plotted, communications checked, navigation logs updated, but what they did not see, and perhaps did not even hear, was the submarine slipping into a shadow zone. Their sonar revealed nothing. Their radar registered nothing. The silence was perfect. A zero reading can seem normal at sea, but this one was far from mundane. It concealed a predator. Meanwhile, inside the U.S. boat, data feeds streamed to analysts and mission control. Sensors picked up acoustic signatures, subtle rustles of propeller cavitation, faint harmonic vibrations from diesel-electric vessels, none of which touched this nuclear craft. Thermal sensors monitored the temperature stratifications, mapping the layers that the sub could exploit to hide. Electronic warfare sensors monitored radar frequencies bouncing off the patrolling ship. Every blip, every ping, every silence itself was cataloged. The target, the patrol ship, believed it was unseen. It wasn't. It was surveyed. Then came the moment of transmission. Encrypted packets of intelligence, radar frequency maps, reaction time logs, acoustic baseline profiles were sent to the command center. Not just any center, but the heart of U.S. Southern Command in Florida, and via intermediate relay to the forward command ship, the USS Tripoli. From there, the data would feed into broader signals intelligence networks, helping planners decide not if they would act, but when. The patrol ship, oblivious, drifting in stale routine, became the subject of a deep-sea audit. Back below the waves, the submarine remains blacked out. No lights, no innocent transits, no chatter, just the cold mechanics of surveillance. The posture is not one of aggression yet. The point is dominance without warning. The aim is to record how the patrol ship reacts. How long before the crew abandons the sonar dome? How quickly do they rotate radar sweeps? How many drones or sonar buoys do they release? That information matters. The enemies you never see often tell you their capabilities without firing a shot. In the broader picture, this approach is part of a bigger strategy: projecting force quietly. According to open source data, the Virginia-class submarine is equipped to perform a wide array of missions: strike warfare, anti-submarine warfare, intelligence gathering, and special operations support. The ability to slip into hostile waters, remain unseen, and observe an adversary at leisure changes the equation of naval power. On the surface, the patrol ship believes it is dominant. On the bottom, the submarine knows it has the upper hand. The approach phase ends when the predator either surfaces, departs, or, if commanded, engages. Tonight, it remained invisible. The patrol ship continued its course, unaware that it had fulfilled the role of target in a game of shadows, and the records in Florida grew longer. The ocean is deep, the water's dark, and the rules have shifted. A vessel worth billions of dollars enters your zone unannounced. You don't detect it, it watches you, and it leaves, your system still blinking as though nothing happened. What if next time you're not just being watched, but you're about to become the target? The moment drifted in slow motion. A hull appeared just shy of 2 nautical miles from the Venezuelan patrol ship Guapiro. The American submarine, a Virginia-class fast attack boat, surfaced with deliberate precision. At one point, 9 nautical miles, the gap was small. On the deck of the Guapiro, the alarms flooded in. Flashing lights, red warnings, sensors that had failed to pick up anything until now. A physical presence had emerged from the depths to stand in their waters. Wind whipped over the Caribbean surface. The waves slapped the hulls. Metal groaned as the submarine's sail broke the waterline, stark against the morning light. Then, in eerie contrast, the only break in silence came from a single sonar ping, calculated, controlled, unmistakable. The patrol ship's system registered it, perhaps too late. In that moment, every gun on the Guapiro swiveled toward the intruder. Every radar dome rotated, every periscope scanned the horizon, but the American craft held perfectly still. No flare-up, no shot fired, just presence. In those 3 minutes, the stakes sat heavy in the air. On the surface, the Venezuelan crew searched for a target. Below the surface, the U.S. crew measured their reactions. The Americans recorded the radar rotation angle, logged the time between alarm and response, cataloged the frequency of the sonar returns. Each data point mattered. The patrol ship broadcast its posture. The submarine gathered silence. Because this was more than a show of force, it was a test of control. The American submarine did not chase. It did not fire. It simply leapt into dominance and left the Guapiro to realize what had happened. A message sent without a missile. A warning delivered without a bang. Imagine the officers on the Guapiro, their weapons locked and ready, their eyes scanning water that may hide the unseen. For 3 minutes, they lived a question. Do we strike? Do we report? Do we simply retreat and preserve what's left? Their systems were honed for action, yet the silent intruder denied them the simple binary of fight or flight. The submarine held their fate in suspension. Meanwhile, in a command center far away, mission control back in Florida and on board the command ship were watching. Every action on the Guapiro's radar and sonar was captured. The delay between alarm and weapon readiness. The exact moment the engines throttled to full. The pattern of the radio chatter, because in the new era of naval conflict, intelligence often wins before the first shot is fired. After 3 minutes, the Virginia-class sub did what it does best. It withdrew. It sank back beneath the waves and vanished as though it had never touched the surface. The Guapiro remained afloat, left to process what had just happened. The seas returned to normal, but the balance of power did not. What the Venezuelan Navy realized in those minutes was that they had been auditioning for a role they did not choose. This kind of confrontation is not about broadsides and cannon fire. It is about control of awareness. It is about forcing your opponent to respond, to show their hand, while you remain hidden. For the United States, the display achieved 2 things at once: reassurance to allies that America can fight where needed, and warning to adversaries that access doesn't require open conflict. The U.S. told Venezuela, quietly, that their waters were no longer entirely their waters. For the patrol ship and its crew, the message arrived not by explosion, but by silence. And the silence spoke volumes. The sea held its breath. At precisely the moment observers on the Venezuelan patrol ship noticed something wrong, the American Virginia-class submarine tilted ever so slightly. the metal side catching the weak light at the surface. A white froth of bubbles curled along the hull, the only sign of movement as the vessel slipped downward almost imperceptibly. Less than 5 minutes earlier, it had hovered at 1.9 nautical miles, exposing itself deliberately. Now it was gone. No prop wash, no sonar signature. When the sonar dome of the Guapiro returned to normal readings, the submarine had already vanished beneath the waves. For the crew of the Venezuelan ship, the moment that the signal went silent was more chilling than any explosion. They did not see the departure. There was no flare, no surface turbulence, only the drained feeling of being watched and then left alone. Systems registered nothing. The sea returned to its indifferent rhythm. No wake trailed behind the submarine. None of the sensors could lock on. It was as if the ghost had stepped out of the water and melted into the depths. In that stillness, the ship's radar spun, the sonar ticked through its dials. But the contact was gone. Far offshore, the intelligence machine in Washington came alive. The encrypted data transmitted from the submerged boat, acoustic logs, thermal layer profiles, radar reaction times of the patrol ship, the precise coordinates of every sensor sweep, arrived at the command center of United States Southern Command in Florida and to the forward control ship. These transmissions are not part of routine patrol reporting. They represent a calculated intelligence haul, recorded without warning, extracted without contact. The submarine did not just disappear, it delivered its payload of secrets. According to open source reporting, U.S. forces in the Southern Caribbean are conducting their largest naval deployment in decades. Meanwhile, on the surface, Venezuela's Navy attempted to re-establish awareness of its own domain. Patrol patterns shifted. Ships rechecked navigation logs. The radar operators recalibrated their domes. But everything moved in familiar ways. The same routes, the same guard zones, and yet the threat had come silently, unseen. It exposed a gap in the perimeter that had convinced many on board they were operating in safe waters. For hours, the world above the waves returned to its routine pace, but the dynamic had changed. The invisible visitor had infiltrated, surveilled, and left, leaving behind the question, if you cannot see the threat, what can you defend? 3 minutes of tension had become a strategic secret. The submarine's surfacing at 1.9 nautical miles was a display. Its departure was a message. A naval asset worth billions of dollars did not engage in combat, did not shoot, did not broadcast its presence with flares or missiles. It simply existed, observed, departed. The aftermath carried no wreckage, no radio logs labeled engagement, only the silent hum of ships continuing their patrol as though nothing had happened. Yet the knowledge of that event rippled through naval intelligence networks and through the command rooms of both nations. For the Venezuelan sailors, the seas they patrol felt unchanged, but in fact, they were now under watch. For the U.S. command, the operation succeeded. It collected, it demonstrated, and it withdrew without trace. The waters regained ease, but the significance lingered. Because in modern maritime power, what you don't hear can matter more than what you do hear. If you were the commander of the Venezuelan patrol force, how would you react when you realize the adversary can appear in your zone, stay long enough to gather data, and vanish without warning? Would you increase patrols, alter routes, fire a warning shot, and risk escalation? Or would you pull back, tighten your sensors, and accept the presence of a ghost in your waters? The submarine's rise at 1.9 nautical miles was not a mistake of seamanship. It was a tactic, deterrence by exposure. By briefly showing itself inside Venezuela's patrol envelope, the U.S. boat forced the other side to reveal procedures, timelines, and nerves, while keeping its own options open. In a region now crowded with American warships, a nuclear-powered attack sub, and soon an aircraft carrier, that single appearance fit neatly into a wider pressure campaign already changing the map of the Southern Caribbean. The message was simple. We can enter, we can watch, and we can leave whenever we choose. Washington's intent has been telegraphed for weeks. More ships, more aircraft, and a retooled counter-narcotics mission under U.S. Southern Command and a new task force structure. So a submarine surfacing so close to the Venezuelan coast was less a surprise than a statement. It amplified what the region was already seeing on radar screens and satellite feeds, the heaviest U.S. naval posture here in years. Surfacing is risky for a submarine. It trades invisibility for leverage, yet the leverage is powerful. When the American hull broke the water, Venezuela's patrol ship had to sprint through its playbook. Spin the radars, warm the weapons, stabilize bearings, flood the radios. In those frantic minutes, the U.S. crew measured everything: reaction delay, sensor angles, radio discipline, and piped it ashore through encrypted bursts to Florida and the forward command ship. The intelligence haul was invisible, but immediate, and it arrived alongside a broader stream of surveillance that has accompanied the U.S. buildup since late summer. Washington is not telegraphing a conventional war plan. It is building a pressure corridor that blends policing with power projection. Officially, the missions are framed as counter-narcotics and maritime security, but their effects are unmistakably strategic. They compress the operating space around Caracas and put Venezuelan forces under a constant microscope. Reuters has already detailed strikes on suspected drug boats and the creation of a new task structure to run these operations, signs that what began as a surge is hardening into a standing architecture. Why surface at all? Because visibility can be a weapon. For allies and partners in the Caribbean, a sudden black sail near Venezuela proves capability more convincingly than any press release. For adversaries, it seeds doubt. If a U.S. boat can appear there today, where was it yesterday, and what did it record? That doubt multiplies when layered atop a visible armada. The Washington Post reports 8 U.S. warships already in theater, a special operations vessel, and a nuclear-powered attack submarine, with the carrier USS Gerald R. Ford and additional escorts inbound. It is a picture of sustained resolve, not a one-night patrol. The intelligence value is equally blunt. Every time Venezuelan crews scramble from routine to red alert, they leave fingerprints: the timing of radar sweeps, the choreography of radio traffic, the cadence of engine orders. Catalog enough of those fingerprints in future operations, whether to interdict smuggling routes or to shadow naval exercises, run with fewer surprises. That is why the show yourself, then vanish sequence matters. It turns a 3-minute tableau into months of exploitable data without handing the other side a pretext for escalation. And escalation matters here because the theater is hot. In recent weeks, U.S. forces have carried out multiple at-sea strikes on suspected narco boats as part of the same regional push, actions that have drawn both applause and sharp criticism as legal and political debates erupt around rules of engagement. Whether one sees them as law enforcement with missiles or military coercion by another name, they form the ambient backdrop for any standoff at sea. A submarine surfacing 2 miles off a tense coastline reverberates differently when destroyers, marines, and surveillance aircraft are already in motion. So the tactic decodes like this: signal, sample, and shape. Signal capability with a controlled exposure. Sample the adversary's reactions and systems under stress. Shape tomorrow's behavior by letting the sample be noticed. It is raucous without being reckless, and it underlines a truth about modern maritime competition. The side that controls attention often controls escalation. When the submarine finally slipped beneath the surface, the Caribbean returned to its calm blue mask. But that calm meant nothing anymore. Venezuela's sailors stood on a quiet deck, staring into an empty horizon, fully aware that the sea around them would never again feel safe. The water looked still, yet it had just proven to be the most unpredictable battlefield on Earth. The United States had not fired a single shot, but it had already redrawn the boundaries of confidence and control. What lingered after that encounter wasn't the sound of the sonar ping. It was the silence that followed. It was the silence of a power that doesn't need to shout to be understood. That's what makes 21st century warfare so unsettling. Conflict now moves in frequencies and shadows, in data streams and unseen depths. The moment of confrontation may have lasted only minutes, but the message will echo for years. As Reuters and Naval News have both reported, Washington's strategy in the Southern Caribbean continues to expand, turning the region into a stage for quiet deterrence and invisible power projection. So the question remains, in an age where the loudest weapons are often silent, who truly holds dominance? The one with superior firepower, or the one who can make their enemy too afraid to use it? Leave your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to subscribe to Military Power to uncover more secrets still hidden beneath the waves.